Significant escalation is not in anyone's interest. What we want to see is calm heads prevail.
Israel has attacked Iran, raising fears that the world remains on the precipice of World War III. Overnight, there were reports of multiple explosions in the central Iranian province of Isfahan, which is also home to the Natanz underground nuclear bunker, where Iran has developed much of its nuclear capability. This attack appears to be Israel's vengeance for a massive wave of missiles and drones that was launched by Iran at Israel last weekend. And that strike from Iran last weekend was Iran's vengeance for an Israeli missile strike on an Iranian embassy building in Damascus that killed 7 people, including 2 generals from the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The tit-for-tat exchange has raised fears that this violence could spiral into a wider Middle Eastern conflict that could suck in neighbours and allies and ultimately plunge the world into a chaotic, deadly world conflict, World War III. Exactly what happened overnight remains unclear, but US officials have signalled that they believe it was an Israeli missile strike that hit the central province of Isfahan in Iran. Reports of those explosions near an airport and a military base. There are also reports that air defences across Iran were activated. It's not clear, though, what weapons were used, and reports from inside Iran appear to be trying to play down the scale and significance of the attack. Indeed, some suggestions that this was not a missile, but in fact there were quadcopter drones that were shot down and failed to reach their targets. We should take some reassurance from the fact that Tehran's state-controlled media, or loosely state-aligned media, is playing this down, because that would give Iran breathing space within its own country as the government faces its domestic audience to resist calls from hardliners to respond in turn. Let's look back at how this started. There have been for many, many years simmering and violent tensions between Iran and Israel. These two countries are in many ways arch enemies. Israel has assassinated the head of Iran's nuclear program. Iran has accused Israel of killing a number of its senior military officials. Iran has used its proxy forces, both Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, and Houthi rebels in Yemen to attack Israel and Iranian interests. There has for a long time been a shadow conflict between these two countries, fought by proxies and intelligence services. But on the 1st of April, Israel launched a missile strike at a building in Damascus, a consulate building adjacent to the Iranian embassy there, and that killed 7 people, including 2 senior generals of the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Those generals, the commander, included the commander of operations in Iraq and Syria and his deputy. This was at face value a violation of international protocols which treat embassies as sovereign territory of the countries to which they belong. And Iran protested this at the United Nations and to anybody who would listen as a violation of their sovereignty, and they vowed revenge. That revenge came almost 2 weeks later to the day when Tehran unleashed this massive bombardment of cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and Shahed kamikaze one-way attack drones from its territory towards Israel. Now, most of those drones, we understand 99%, not just of the drones, but of the missiles as well, were shot down, most of them before they reached Israeli territory. They were shot down by Israel's armed forces, but also huge numbers by American armed forces, the American Air Force, and indeed the US Navy. Also, British Royal Air Force jets involved, Jordanian warplanes and air defences activated, and reports that other Arab nations, possibly Saudi Arabia, involved as well. It was a coordinated international effort to defend Israel, and part of the reason it could be so coordinated, part of the reason it was so well planned, was because Iran had telegraphed its plans. It had announced what it was intending to do before it did it. And that was, we can surmise, because Iran wanted to take revenge. The government needed to be seen to deter similar attacks on its embassies, to draw a line in the sand. Indeed, they publicly invoked Article 51 of the United Nations Charter, which is the right of a nation to self-defense. But equally, perhaps, Iran did not want to see this conflict spiral into the regional war, into World War III, as it could still. And therefore, they announced their plans in advance. Many of those missiles and drones had to overfly Iran's neighbours, overfly the territory of countries which are not actively engaged in this conflict between Iran and Israel. In the immediate aftermath of that, we saw President Joe Biden urge Israel to take the win, in his words, not to hit back. Britain's Lord Cameron, Foreign Secretary, echoed exactly those words, take the win. And he also encouraged Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to respond with the head rather than the heart, again urging him to show restraint to avoid this conflict spiralling. The message from Israel, however, has been consistent and clear, that Israel makes its own decisions and that they would take their revenge at a time and a place of their choosing. It appears that is what we have seen in the early hours of this morning. Israel has taken its revenge, a far more focused attack than what we saw Iran launching, but nonetheless significant, because it appears that Israel has found a way to bypass Iran's air defences, and they've attacked a target in Isfahan in central Iran, deep inside Iranian territory. Isfahan is home to the Natanz underground nuclear bunkers. This is where we know that Iran has been developing much of its uranium enrichment, its covert nuclear weapons program. The fact that Israel has been able to hit nearby is perhaps a sign that the nuclear endeavour of Iran might also be held at risk. And that will be a cause of great concern to the Iranian regime. Nonetheless, another reason for us to take some reassurance, the message today from the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is the United Nations body which monitors nuclear programs, they are saying that site, that the Natanz site, indeed none of the nuclear sites, have been damaged. So there are two things happening today simultaneously. At once, we've had a blow back, a strike back from Israel towards Iran. That is worrying. That is potentially the next link in the chain, in a chain reaction which could lead us to World War III. But at the same time, that strike back from Israel does appear to be contained, and the Iranian authorities appear to be playing it down. And from that, we should take some encouragement that perhaps this chapter, rather than being the touch paper that ignites a conflict, could instead be beginning to fizzle out, at least for now. Of course, Israel remains heavily engaged in a bitter and bloody conflict in the Gaza Strip, where some 33,000 people are feared to have been killed, according to figures coming out from the Gazan and Hamas-run authorities. The war in the Middle East is ongoing. The risks of it escalating remain. For now, we must hope this is drawing to a close. The Iran-Israel element of this chapter, the most heated element of this conflict, drawing to a close.